Ivory, is there a voice that you're sensing with Red Room? I mean, is it
well,
political?
You may have noticed it's a little political.
Yeah, I was going to say.
which we love. And, Red Room is a forum. It's a community for voices to have civil, honest dialogue about what's really going on in their world. And so we allow all kinds of voices. But I have to say, we are definitely, and I'm very proud of this, we're definitely getting people who have something very important to say, whether it's about human rights or about justice. The list of causes that we support, when you see all the causes all the authors support, it really paints a picture of people who care about making the world a better place. And my underlying philosophy that Red Room has is that writing and writers change the world. There's always the thought, and the thought memorialized in writing, and then the spreading of those words. Writers change the world. Writing has a tremendous impact on transforming societies. So our hope is that Red Room will become a conduit for the independent thought and the change that people are interested in. We don't have a political ideology. We let people figure that out for themselves and express that for themselves. It's been very exciting to see how passionately people still feel. People are not jaded. People want to help others and they want to change the world. And I love seeing that at work every day where I go to work.
Have you had anybody on there that's been really against the grain? I know, Peter, I think you had somebody that was on your site. I just heard the tail end of that story. I don't know if you want to talk about that or not. It didn't exactly reflect your personal political
Well,
views.
I have to explain. When my book came out, I started a correspondence with this liberal Republican woman from New York State. And she was a really interesting woman. She'd really read my book deeply. She had worked as a foster mother. She'd raised a lot of kids. She was really a kind of selfless and interesting person. And we had this long dialogue because, it's flattering to get a letter as a writer. Somebody took the time. So then she confessed to me that she was a web maven. And what she did was she designed websites. And convinced me that this might be good for me. And I said, okay. And she made me this beautiful website, 180 pages. And she's frightening. I mean, I would go, she'd say, how was your trip to Florida? And, some stewardess looked it up and wrote to her, yeah, I saw him in the airport. So she knows more about me than I do. So I was really appreciative. Well, when 9/11 happened, and we had very different politics, but when 9/11 happened, somebody called me up and said, hey, do you know that there's a huge American flag and a picture of George Bush on your website? I said, no, I really didn't know that. And I opened it up, and sure, there it was. There was old jug ears and a big flag behind him. And I said, hey, cut this out. These are not my politics. This is not okay. And she said, get stuffed. I'm doing this for free. And that means I'm a co-contributor to this website. And then she locked it up and she shut it down. And I couldn't get in it. I couldn't change it. I couldn't do anything. And it was just hanging out there. And so finally we negotiated, and I now pay her to run the website. And she's not a co-contributor. And she has to put my rants on there and keep hers off.
And that's
Ivory, how do you deal with that?
That's the world before redroomdotcom. Paying someone to argue with your politics. So now, of course, on Red Room, it's free, and Peter can post whatever he wants, and so forth. So, I mean, that's the thing, is people need to be able to express themselves. As far as on redroom.com, we have had some people who have complained about other people's politics, and we say, well, why don't you write them a polite comment on their blog explaining yourself, or write a book, and we would love to have you have your own author page on Red Room as well. It's equal opportunity discussion.
Well, who governs this? Because I remember I had a science blog for a while, and there were these two guys who came on every time I mentioned the word evolution or Darwin, or et cetera. And they would have a huge fight between themselves on the comments. They would just go on and on and on. We kept saying, should we cut these guys? I mean, nobody's actually reading this. It's like 50 comments.
Well, you know, there's a lot of ways in which our business is benefiting from the fact that we're getting into this game in 2008. And there's been more than a decade of learning about what works and what doesn't work on the web. And one of the things that often kills an intelligent discussion is somebody jumping in who is insane or off topic or, you know, just socially inappropriate. And so we actually, and they're in the audience here tonight at the Commonwealth Club, we actually have some of our community department staff people, and what they do is they encourage and support people to express themselves and very occasionally tell somebody that maybe that's a little bit off topic or maybe not super constructive. But what's interesting to me is, because one of the things that I get to do as a CEO is call other CEOs and say, what goes on over there at that Web 2.0 company? And what I found out is we have literally, since starting, you know, with the, you know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of conversations that have gone on, we've actually removed in the single digits, less than 10. And everybody I've talked to at every other type of website says that they don't believe me. But so I think that because of the writers we have, our founding authors that you're seeing up here on the panel, it just attracts the kind of people who respect the written word and respect ideas, and we're not getting a lot of that. So I guess we've set the tone, I hope.
Let me ask quickly, the panel, is there anything wrong with this? Is there anything that's you know, that could go wrong? I mean, in the sense, you know, I asked you all about being lone wolves. I mean, is this encouraging a certain behavior? You know, sometimes the internet, you know, I ban my kids mostly from, you know, being on the computer because they would sit there all day long. I mean, are we in a funny way uncreating live communities by creating an internet community? Is that a fair question?
It's a fair question. It's something that I wrote about yesterday. It is a problem. I mean, there is no such thing as a blade that doesn't have two sides. To me, the fundamental distinction between the current political time and the 60s was, in the 60s, thousands of bodies would show up in a university you know, center, and they would get commonly educated at a teach-in. They would get common information at the same time, and then they would go and they would deliver their bodies to some place where they could make a difference, a draft board, a railroad track, stopping a munitions train. And they threatened to paralyze the workings of the United States if we did not stop the war in Vietnam. And there is something kind of misleading about a cyber community, where the positive side of it is we've changed political fundraising. We have a welter of new ideas, and you can drown in new ideas, and anything can be expressed. But you know, a real community brings you soup when you're sick, takes care of your children when you can't make it, and buries you when you die. And it's too easy, I think, to sit at a computer and feel that with a click of a mouse you are spreading revolutionary portent and you are, you know, castrating the administration, when in fact you're sitting in your living room. And when you look out in the street, nobody is in the street while the United States is torturing and practicing extreme rendition and stripping our civil liberties and driving the economy into the toilet and creating divisions of income that place us first in the industrialized world. And I put some of that on the feet of the internet. I think it's the shadow side of the internet that it has vitiated real, active, on-the-ground community.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tool for communication. Yeah. It's the guy who had George Bush.
Both people who agree with me